Welcome to the Highwood Riding Candidates Forum, brought to you both by the Okotoks District Chamber of Commerce and the Diamond Valley Chamber of Commerce. My name is Dawn Lemaiste, and I'm the Executive Director with the Okotoks Chamber, and I'm very excited to have you all here this evening in support of our community. Before we kick things off, I'd like to acknowledge that we are grateful for the Indigenous people of the Blackfoot Confederacy, of the Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, Tsuut'ina, Ayak, Nakota Nations, Métis Nation, and Region 3 of the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta Nations for allowing us to live, work, and create within their unceded territories. I would also like to thank the Diamond Valley Chamber for partnering with us tonight, and for the Okotoks Evangelical Free Church, I always say that wrong, I'm sorry, for hosting us here this evening and opening their doors to our group here tonight. As well, we have the Eagle 100.9 here, ensuring that everybody who's unable to be in attendance can watch live at Okotoks Online, and it will also be recorded and uploaded to both the Eagle 100.9 and our websites as of tomorrow. A small change for tonight's forum: Shauna Fife from the Alberta Chamber of Commerce was unable to attend due to being caught in traffic just outside of Edmonton. She sends her regrets, and in her place, we've had a last-minute fill-in of Chelsea Bazayan, our chamber president here in Okotoks. So please be kind and understanding with this change. We're not as prepared as we normally would be because we're all taking different roles, including myself, for tonight's forum. With that, I'd like to introduce Chelsea Bazayan, Chamber President, Okotoks and District.
Perfect. Thank you, Dawn, for the introduction, and thank you, everyone, for attending tonight. I'm going to start by going over the rules and expectations of candidates and attendees before we get to the candidate introductions. So, to get started, we have a list of predetermined questions collected from the public through an online survey process in advance of the forum. These have been combined with questions from Vote Prosperity platform prepared by the Alberta Chamber of Commerce specifically for this provincial election. Questions will be accepted from the attendees during the forum. Questions can be submitted at the question submission stations. Both of them, I believe, are at the back. You would have seen them coming in. So please feel free to get up, write questions. Dawn will be taking them and then bringing them up to me. These questions will be reviewed to ensure that they are appropriate, not repetitive, and that they are respectful. There will be no live questions taken from the floor during the event. It is up to the discretion of the moderator, myself, to create a balance of pre-submitted questions and questions brought forth during the forum. And again, please have patience with me as I'm a last-minute fill-in here. Both candidates and those in the audience are asked to be respectful. Candidates are expected to allow each candidate the opportunity to speak during their allocated time without being cut off or interrupted. Don't cut up each other either. It's not good. We would also ask that the audience refrain from clapping, cheering, booing for the duration of the forum. Any candidate, that was in the notes, not just because. Any candidate or attendee not willing to participate within these parameters will be asked to leave. So before we begin, I would like to reiterate that this is a nonpartisan forum and we value respectful conduct from both the candidates and the audience. As the moderator, I reserve the right to stop the forum at any time if such respect is not conducted. Each candidate will give a 2-minute opener. After that, we will get to the questions where candidates have 1 minute to respond, and there will be no rebuttals. At 8:45, we complete questions and give each candidate 90 seconds for a closing statement. The order of which everybody is to go was done by a random draw, so we will get started with an introduction and opener from Mike.
Good evening, Highwood. Thank you for coming out and listening to what I hope will be a civilized debate and discussion based on policy, new ideas for the future of our riding and our great province. For those of you who have not yet met me or any of the Wild Rose Independence Party, allow me to tell you a bit about myself and what our party believes in. First, my name is Mike, and I believe in individual freedom, the pursuit of happiness, and prosperity. Each one of you in the building tonight have the right to pursue your dreams and goals without gatekeepers getting in your way. Wild Rose Nation, together with you, the people of Alberta, will assert our independence and redefine our relationship with Canada. I hope to inspire you with merits of sovereignty, show you our purpose, and share our vision to make Alberta the greatest place to live. That being said, as it currently stands in our province, our leadership is trying to fight all the big battles and deal with the federal forces that aggressively encroach on our territory and squash our rights. However, I believe that before we can take on Ottawa, we have to get our own house in order. We must reestablish our identity and our values that once made Alberta great. Our economic strengths in agriculture, oil and gas. Give more assistance to our ranchers, farmers, and energy sector workers. Alberta will rightfully become a new sovereign constitutional republic that recognizes the supremacy of God and the rule of law within individual rights and freedoms, a shining beacon to the world as the safest, healthiest, and most prosperous free country to live in. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mike. I will pass it off to RJ.
Hi, I'm RJ Sigurdson, and I just want to start by saying it's been an absolute honor to serve Highwood for the past 4 years. And of course, I'm seeking your support once again for re-election. 4 years ago, it was clear that Albertans wanted a return to the Alberta Advantage. Albertans were fed up with the poor management of the province by the NDP. That's why we committed to building jobs and the economy. In just one term, that was a huge accomplishment, but I think we have accomplished a lot. We have focused on creating a positive economic environment, creating 250,000 jobs, and at the same time, we have increased government revenue to sustainably support social services with record investments in healthcare, mental health, and education, all while building critical capital infrastructure. We had a duty to protect the next generation from reckless spending and debts. That is why we paid all the debt that matured in 2022, totaling $13.4 billion, saving $500 million a year of cost in debt servicing. We invested $2 billion in the Heritage Savings Trust Fund to continue to save for future generations. We're expanding our capacity in healthcare system by creating 3,400 new post-secondary seats for healthcare workers, including 120 medical seats to help address doctor shortages. In EMS, I was honored to engage directly with frontline workers and implement the recommended changes that are now resulting in dramatic improvements in response times. Our local ambulances are no longer flexing to the city. Red alerts have almost been eliminated. And at the same time, we've improved the work environment for EMS personnel. We've even seen a 10-minute reduction in ambulance response times. I also want to highlight a local achievement that I was excited to be a part of. After almost 2 decades, we now have a regional water project that is designed through environmental approval and dedicated funding to begin construction, resolving a problem that has restrained economic growth in this area for far too long. Thank you.
Thank you, RJ. And the mic is yours, Jessica, sorry.
You can say Jess, that's okay. So Alberta is booming. Oil prices are high and times are good. Meanwhile, our healthcare system is failing. Our schools are underfunded and overcrowded. Teachers, nurses, and doctors are burnt out and they're pleading for our help. Seniors are underserved, and our children, we are failing them most of all. Let me repeat, this is the most prosperous province in Canada, and we are not taking care of the people who power it. Tonight I'm going to tell you about the NDP's plans to tackle these complex issues. These plans are based on expertise, on experience, and evidence. This is not about spending more, it is about smart spending. For example, 30 physicians from High River Hospital wrote an open letter to all of us a few weeks ago. They implore us to invest in primary health. Think of our healthcare system as a home. So primary care is the maintenance of that home. So there are the furnace filters, cleaning the gutters, new batteries, and the fire alarm. These are your doctor visits, your mental health appointments, and with other primary care professionals as well. These things do cost a little bit of money, but it's worth it because they help us avoid the big, expensive repairs down the road. It's prevention, and it's about staying healthy, and it's about reducing costs and strain on everything down the line from EMS to the ICU. Tonight, you'll hear a lot about recruitment, And it's super important, but it doesn't mean a darn thing if you can't keep the people you've recruited. People want an affordable, good life. They want good jobs, healthcare, schools, stability, and safety. This is our chance right now to make these good times last. And to do that, we're gonna need a change. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. So I understand the want to clap, so what we're going to do instead of no clapping is we'll do just one quick one. And I appreciate that you want to clap, and that's great, but it does take time away from the candidates being able to take questions. Although I do appreciate it, we'll just give her one solid clap. That'll be good. Thank you. Well, that's okay, I'll jump in. So I am going to start with one from the floor question here. So this question is going to go to Mike first, and then we'll go RJ and Jessica. With the high cost of transportation and high inflation of food, what is your party's plan to grow the agri-food processing industry in Alberta?
So we have an organic plan to promote farm-to-table distribution and cut out a lot of the gatekeeping. Part of the inflation is actually coming from the federal government because they continue to print money that just causes the cost of everything to go up. Instead of printing money, let's use the money that we have existing, pay off our debts, and focus on putting that money back in the pockets of Albertans and allowing them to be actually to be able to afford their food.
Thank you very much. RJ?
Well, agri-food processing, very happy to say that our government was the one that announced the agri-food processing tax credit to be able to bring more here to the province. They're coming here in groves now, a lot of interest because we are that low tax environment. And with that, we're moving forward with keeping the inflation as low as possible in Alberta. That includes suspending the fuel tax, saving 13 cents a liter, also capping natural gas. These are the things that agri-food processing wants to see when they're looking for an investment area. What we're seeing right now through Cavendish, what we're seeing through other agri-food processors is Alberta is a beacon to them now, and they're coming here for that investment. So we will continue with our strategy to make sure we have the lowest tax jurisdiction with the least regulatory burden that will free up those businesses to make sure that Alberta is the best place to invest when it comes to processing food.
Thank you, RJ. And Jessica?
So agriculture is a sector that I admittedly did not know that much about, even though I grew up in rural. And earlier this week, I got to spend some time with a rancher who taught me as much as he could in one afternoon. And it confirmed kind of what I thought, which is these farmers and these ranchers are the stewards of our agricultural land, and that plays a big role in Alberta, now more than ever with food shortages. It's our goal with the NDP to bring high-speed internet to rural areas, which is going to help these farms take advantage of the technology that's out there. We're going to provide capital to agribusiness for upgrading, which means we won't have to export that profit. If we can make a more complete product, then we make a better profit on it. We're going to incentivize small-scale rural startups, and we're going to support agriculture programs in schools so we have the next generation of ranchers and farmers and food producers. We're going to ensure that agriculture and ag tech are core to the technology sector. And finally, one of the most important things I learned is that we need to protect our water on behalf of these ranchers and these farmers.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, everyone, for keeping the clapping little, and I don't have to get angry. All right, so we had a successful local business recently shut down specifically because utility costs were astronomical and totally unpredictable. Many other businesses came forward with similar stories, and homeowners have too. At issue is not the price of the commodity itself, but rather the absurd administration and delivery fees that are being charged. One of the largest problems is that no one is accountable to make this information transparent, right from the providers up through the government who deregulated the industry. This is becoming a crisis. Does your party have any intention to address this issue? And we will start with RJ.
Well, the first thing we had to address right away was moving back to the energy market. The system that the NDP had built actually put Alberta at a huge disadvantage. Getting out of that cost a huge amount of money. They also accelerated a coal phase-out that everybody is paying for right now. And just like they did last time, they've now committed to a 2035 phase out, the largest campaign promise ever in Alberta history, totaling $87 billion. And every utility company will tell you right now, that means your bills will go up 40% overnight as soon as if they take government. This is not the path forward. We need to continue to work with our utility providers. One of the biggest contributions to the cost of production is the carbon tax. We need help from our federal partners to stop accelerating that. They have intentions to increase it 300% with no environmental improvement. Let's be honest, technology is the answer to improving the environment. So when it comes to utilities, we'll continue with that.
Thank you, RJ. I feel bad, but I got to do it. And Jessica, you're up next.
That $87 billion number is completely flawed, and the people who wrote that report have come out and said as much, and he knows this. So every day I hear about affordability at the doors. I hear about people who can't afford their monthly bills, and I'm one of them, honestly. Under the UCP and with their removal of the electricity cap, I've paid, like many of you, I'm sure, hundreds extra every month. So on top of that, we're paying fees to go to Kananaskis. They removed the caps on insurance premiums. There's lots of other things at play here as well. But in order to address the utility issue, what the NDP is going to do is implement a rate cap. I believe it's at 12 cents from July to September as an emergency measure to make sure families can better make their monthly bills. We're going to launch an investigation into electricity prices to improve competitiveness, reliability and affordability. And we're just going to try and make life more affordable for all Albertans and businesses.
Jessica. All right, Mike.
So part of the issue with utility bills and the problem that small businesses are seeing, it's not so much just with the price of electricity. It's coming from that carbon tax that my opponents are either trying to investigate or reduce or suspend. We plan to completely cut it altogether because Albertans should not be paying a carbon tax for something that is a necessity to their daily lives. To heat your homes, it shouldn't be costing you half your paycheck. To fill up your car with gas, it should not be costing you almost $1.50. If anything, it should be $1 or under. And it affects small businesses, plus they get a bunch of restrictions and gatekeeping measures to even prevent them from starting their own business. And then when they do, they get taxed higher than even the big businesses do. So the start right now is to completely cut the carbon tax, to reduce the cost of our fuel, using Alberta's fuel as opposed to importing oil from foreign countries. We need to process everything within Alberta, create more jobs, and allow our pipeline to get moving forward.
Thank you, Mike. Before we jump into our next question, I just remind the candidates that no direct accusations during. And then I'll get on to the next question here. So this next question will start with Jessica. So creating a tax advantage for businesses has led to increased investment and revenues for the province. How would you propose that Alberta continue to strengthen this tax advantage?
Okay, so we costed our platform and that came out, I believe it was yesterday. So in terms of small business, we're going to cut taxes entirely, provincial taxes, for small business, and that's taking away that 2% that they need to pay for right now. And that's how we're going to assist them. We've claimed that, we've promised that we're not going to touch personal income taxes, and we are going to raise corporate taxes. Now, I know that doesn't sit well with a lot of people, and a lot of people are scared about that chasing away investment. But the reality is, at an 11% tax rate, we're still going to have the lowest tax rate in Canada. And no business is going to leave the lowest tax rate in Canada for a higher tax rate. So as part of provincial revenues, it's important that we balance our tax revenues with what we're getting from royalties. And this is one step in that direction. Alberta is a great place to do business. Nobody is going to leave. And we are going to continue to strengthen our economy.
Thank you. All right. The question is yours, Mike.
Okay, so to strengthen this economy, and aside from what my opponent said, we've seen in 4 years of a Rachel Notley government that people were leaving Alberta in drastic waves. from the higher taxes that existed. What we need to do completely for small businesses is cut their tax for the time being and raise taxes on big business because they have more money to spend. Aside from that, we need to keep business in Alberta. We're not chasing away business. We need to give all of our counterparts across the border and across the world reasons why they should invest in Alberta. We have beautiful scenery. We have an economy that supports employees and supports small business owners. We need to make that prominent. We need to invest in people coming to Canada based off of skills, based off of their merits, and what they offer to our economy. We can't hire based off of gender ideology or race. Hire based off of skills and trade assets alone.
Thank you. RJ?
Well, definitely in our wheelhouse, we're going to continue to do what we've been doing for the last 4 years, creating 250,000 jobs, bringing back economic prosperity, 2 balanced budgets, a surplus, working and unburdening, unchaining our small business through removal of red tape. When they say that increasing taxes won't move business away from Alberta, the 4 years they were in government, it proved it did. It pushed out billions of dollars. 13 consecutive quarters, people left this province. There was no 183,000 lost jobs. We need to continue to move in the other direction, work interactively with our businesses, make sure that we continue to unload as much as possible those cost burdens to them, including taxes, so that they can continue to be profitable, invest back into their communities. The work that we've done over the last 4 years has proven we have the right path forward. It's creating jobs. We are now the economic beacon once again for Canada, and we will continue to do so as a government.
Thank you, RJ. So before I jump into the next question, I will say again, please refrain from direct accusations of candidates. Thank you. All right, so the question is, the position of an MLA requires that you be fair, impartial, nonpartisan, and non-biased when representing Highwood constituents' views on policy. So how would you assist a constituent who is expressing concerns on an issue that opposes your own? And we'll start with Mike.
So my plan, when I become MLA, my office door will always be open. All of my information will be publicized, so you know exactly where to find me. If I'm not at my office for any reason, being up in Edmonton and legislature, I will have an office manager or one of my staffers available to you who can pass along your concerns directly to me, and we will take direct notes that we will pass along to legislature. We're not in the interest of our own gain. We're not in the interest of doing what's best to line our pockets. We're here for you, and if you bring us a concern, we will take note of it and bring that directly to legislature and directly to the Premier.
Thank you, Mike. RJ, go ahead.
Well, I think this is a really important question. You're going to get as an MLA, of course, you're going to be faced with a lot of different views. Being able to balance those views out and make sure that you're communicating that up to Edmonton is a very, very tough task at times. Over the past 4 years, I've had an open door policy. I've never excluded anybody from coming into my office and having a conversation. I've always made myself as available as possible to sit down with anybody, to have those difficult conversations. And I always put my feelings aside and make sure that that person knows that that voice will be heard in Edmonton. And I continue to make sure that I communicate that in the best manner possible. It's important that everybody here knows that their MLA is going to be their voice in Edmonton, regardless of whether I agree and or at times disagree with their view. Everyone deserves a voice in this province.
Thank you, RJ. And Jessica.
Yeah, I think this is a really great question, actually. My name is on the NDP banner here in Highwood, and you can imagine some of the emails that I have received. I have responded to every single one of these, which is nothing like that of an MLA's inbox, I'm sure. But I've responded to them with kindness and politeness and respect. And I commit to having respectful conversations with anyone, regardless of how they feel about an issue, as long as that respect is returned. Listening and asking questions and being intentionally there for your constituents is such an important part of an MLA's job. When I am wrong, I will admit that I'm wrong, and I will listen to your points of view. I will work tirelessly to to get you the information you need, and I will work tirelessly to make time for everyone and anyone in Highwood. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. All right, so moving on to the next question, which we'll start with RJ. There has been discussion on the replacement of the RCMP with an Alberta police force. If this is to occur, where will the potential $350 million come from? Will it be downloaded to municipalities through avenues like increased taxes?
Well, first of all, I want to be clear in saying there has been no decision on this. This was a result of the Fair Deal panel in which we toured around the province. Everybody wanted us to take a look at what it would look like. And I want to be clear in saying that any decision made on an Alberta Provincial Police or transitioning from RCMP will be the decision for Albertans, full stop. And when we look at moving forward, of course, when we talk about what it would be to transition, if it's decided, of course the province is going to step up. I mean, we have to work with our municipal partners and make sure that the plan moving forward is reasonable, makes sense, and cost effective. That is our commitment, and we are committed to it. But and I want to be clear in this, there's been a lot of accusations in this. This decision will be the decision of Albertans and not the government, period.
Thank you, RJ. Jessica.
Is the question, where is the money coming from?
Yeah, and will it be downloaded by municipalities through taxes?
Okay. No, we don't want this. We've been asked multiple times, and municipalities have been clear as day that they don't want this either. We don't want a more expensive version of the same thing with the same problems in a new uniform. Danielle Smith has said the issues of a provincial police force and an Alberta pension plan will be revisited after the election. Let that sink in, okay? Why are you not campaigning on something that you believe in and asking us over and over about? So the answer to the question is municipalities, indeed. Like so many costs of the provincial government over the last 4 years, those will be downloaded to the municipalities, and we will see it on our property tax so that we can blame our councillors and our mayor instead of the provincial government.
All right, thank you. Mike?
So with our plan, we will create and develop an Alberta police force and transition away from the RCMP. It will be an elected police force with civilian oversight. And I think the problem is a lot of people forget the reign of authority and jurisdiction of our police forces. The RCMP is a federal police force that should remain on federal property only. A provincial police force can oversee everything that happens within the boundary of Alberta. The RCMP is also funded by the federal government, who we currently see is not a friend to Alberta. To have an Alberta provincial police force, it would actually benefit Albertans. It would be quicker response times. It would have more allowance for authorities to get to you quicker and not have to decide whether they have to do what the federal government says or what you, Albertans, want. They will respond to you and not to Justin Trudeau.
Thank you, Mike. So this next question, we'll start with Jessica. How do you plan to solve the primary care doctor shortage?
I'd be happy to talk about that, and I talked a little bit about it in the opening as well. So primary care doctor shortage in rural Alberta especially is a huge issue right now. There are 800,000 Albertans without primary care, and by that I mean without a family doctor. So there's two real issues here with retaining family doctors, and one of them is work-life balance, and the other one is isolation. Oh, and a third one, there's the whole overhead administrative issue of running your own office. So the idea of primary healthcare teams, which are integrated public services located in municipalities close to you and me, is the idea of bringing all of these health professionals together so that they can rely on each other and you can see the type of professional, be it a nurse practitioner or a therapist or a family doctor at that particular location. So the reason we're losing a lot of family doctors is because they're going to emergency rooms and urgent care to work, because that's a job you can go to, your benefits are there, they go home at the end of the day, they don't have to do computer work for 2 hours.
Thank you very much, Jessica. And moving on to Mike.
Okay, so now for the real reason for the doctor shortage. We've seen it in the last 3 years. A bunch of doctors, nurses, and hospital staff and other healthcare workers were laid off because they refused to take an experimental vaccine. And aside from that...
All right, Please continue.
And aside from that, all these
Please
workers
remove,
now.
please put down the signs.
And aside from that, we've seen now when all these doctors, nurses are being hired back, they're taking credit for creating new jobs. That's not what you're doing. All you've done is hired back the workers that you illegally and unlawfully fired in the first place.
All right, thank you, Mike. RJ.
Well, I think it's important to understand that this is a global issue. Shortage of doctors is not unique to just Alberta. It's being seen across the globe. It's definitely being seen across Canada. That's why we committed $158 million towards recruiting, retaining health professionals across the board, expanding and working with our post-secondary institutions to increase 3,600 post-secondary seats so that we're training more doctors locally. With that as well, we're working with both the AMA and with doctors across the province to be able to get better accreditation for those individuals that have come here, do have the training, and they can get expressed in to work as physicians in our province, so they're actually doing what they were trained to do where they came from. These are going to be strategies, but also we need to make sure that we're investing in the infrastructure. That's why our government is focused on putting back into our rural communities the ORs, operating rooms, and massive investment into the critical infrastructure needed so that we can bring those services back to our rural communities.
Thank you, RJ. So I will remind the attendees to stay respectful to one another, and anytime there is excessive clapping, you are taking away from the candidate being able to speak. So just a note there. So next question, we are actually going to start with Mike this time. And how would you propose that Alberta work with the provinces and territories to establish an internationally competitive regulatory environment?
Can you specify what sector you're referring to?
This was a question that was brought in, so I think it's probably pretty wide.
Okay, so
Sure, the intention of the question.
So with our future going forward with a Wild Rose government, what we would be focusing on is establishing new trade relationships, not only with the other provinces, but with states across the border as well, to be able to create an energy corridor. So restarting that pipeline, sending it down through the US and across Canada to allow people to have more jobs. It would actually create over 30,000 jobs in this province alone, along with the rest of the country. If we could actually cooperate with the federal government, with a better federal government, we would be able to create all those jobs, more than 1 million jobs across the country for everyone between working directly in our oil reserves, our oil patches, as well as construction to construct the pipeline and then the deliverance of it throughout our country.
Thank you, Mike. RJ, yours.
I hate to do this. Can you repeat the question just
Yeah, no worries.
quickly?
How would you propose that Alberta work with the provinces and territories to establish an internationally competitive regulatory environment? I guess it would be nationally if you're working with provinces and territories.
Well, I mean, we've talked about working with our neighbors and partners, of course, on what we're going to do to create a regulatory environment that, of course, is going to advance the province. To be able to do what we do best, which is to provide the most ethical and responsible energy in the world. Economic corridors are a good chance to be able to work with our partners coast to coast to be able to finally decide on what that should look like. Finally, look at areas in which we can determine and work with our Indigenous partners to be able to also bring them in to be partners in prosperity with that. I think these are issues that working with our provinces, we got to continue to have that open conversation, but I think things like economic corridors will be a great way to be able to build that partnership and finalize a discussion with always stating Alberta is the most ethical environmental producer in the world, and I continue to support our tier plan and that moving forward.
Thank you, RJ. Jessica, the floor is yours.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if you elect me as your MLA, there's going to be times where I don't know the answer to a question, and this is one of those times, so I'm getting a little bit of practice here. It's important, I think, to say when you don't know the answer to a question like this, and talking about, I can't even remember what the question was, that's okay. This is one of those times. So if anybody here can speak to this issue and will so generously speak with me after the forum, I would like that very much, or maybe later this week. Let me know. I apologize for not knowing the answer to this.
All right, thank you, Jessica. So our schools and school staff are suffering. What is the plan to help decrease class sizes and improve staff retention? Funding has decreased when you consider the increased enrollment. So will that funding be restored? And we'll start with RJ.
Well, I want to first start by saying our minister did come out and release the actual numbers of what our funding was for enrollment, and we actually overfunded enrollment. With that, we've been working with our schools and school divisions to be able to work on the costs. We have allocated additional dollars. Right now, we've moved from $8.2 billion to $8.8 in our 2023 budget. And with that as well, we're focusing on billions more or millions more to be able to look at class size and class complexity. A plan that will hire an additional 3,000 staff. We are committed to that in 2023. Everyone wants to see a better education for their children. I do as well. I'm a father of 3 boys. We have to make sure, though, that we have a plan and that money is being spent in an adequate manner, and work with our school divisions to make sure that they are getting what they need. Now, this is a historic investment in education in 2023 budget.
I'll stop you there, and we'll pass it off to Jessica.
So last Friday, I had the pleasure of sitting down with a bunch of teachers at an ATA forum, and I got to hear how bad the public schools have become. They're overcrowded and underfunded. We have the lowest per student funding in public schools out of all the provinces in Canada. We have people who are going to work every day. They are at the end of their rope, and they cannot succeed because the cards are stacked against them. The Alberta NDP commits to hiring 4,000 new teachers, 3,000 educational assistants and support staff, and we're going to build new schools, including a high school right here in Okotoks that's going to take the pressure off of the comp under the Foothills School Division, Our education system is in crisis. We have to deal with these classrooms of 30 to 40 children, and we can do this together.
Thank you, Jessica. Go ahead, Mike.
So I think it's important that we actually implement freedom of choice in education for students, ensuring that we give equitable funding as well as the curriculum, allowing it to follow students for any education option they choose, whether they're in public school, private school, Catholic school, charter schools, or even being homeschooled. There needs to be adequate funding and adequate curriculum approval for each of those options. It alleviates some of the stress from the class sizes and allows people to learn at a pace that they're comfortable with.
Thank you, Mike. So for the next question, climate change is a concern for many Albertans, and looking at the fire risks already, this trend of an increase in climate events is a reality. What is your party's position on climate change, and what are your plans to protect our land, air, and water to secure our futures? Oh, sorry, starting with Jessica.
So first of all, my heart goes out to everybody who's dealing with the devastating wildfires further north. And so many people, I believe thousands of people right now, are displaced from their homes. So this, I think, is an indicator. I know that there's people in this room that don't believe in climate change, but this is serious and we have to face this head on. So part of this is our commitments to lower carbon emissions with the electrical grid by 2035 and fully be net zero by 2050. All of these things we're working together to make, reduce emissions to the environment and make the world a more sustainable place for our future generations. So on the other hand, when it comes to coal mining, we also want to see that completely come to an end, and we want to protect our eastern slopes, and that's going to protect our water as well. Industry-wise, we need to diversify. We can diversify oil and gas at the same time as diversifying using renewables as well, like our solar and our wind, because Alberta is perfect for that.
Thank you. Mike, the floor is yours.
Okay, so to start off, I will openly admit I am not a climatologist, so I am no expert on the climate subject. However, accepting the recent IPCC reports for what they were, the overall temperature, both in Alberta and around the world, is not yet at an alarming rate where it is causing as much damage as a lot may think it is. However, that being said, Alberta does have some of the best environmental standards and regulations in the world. And to do that and to protect it, we want to mandate that the environment, including land, water, air, fish, wildlife, are managed and protected for use by future generations. This has to continue for generation after generation for the next 100 years if we don't want that temperature to keep going up.
Thank you, Mike. Go ahead, RJ.
Well, I definitely am hugely supportive of our Alberta Emissions Reduction and Energy Development Plan tier that we created when we took government is what I believe is the right answer. Technology, innovation, that's going to improve the environment. That is the answer. When you look at carbon capture, utilization, storage, our advancements in diversification that already have happened in the last 4 years under this government in hydrogen, blue hydrogen, biogas, and geothermal, those are the answers, technology. And with our tier plan, 50% of the revenue coming from that is directly reinvested into advancing those technologies. That also builds jobs right here in Alberta. And we have been that environmental leader in technology. We've seen it in the last 20 years. We've reduced methane emissions at a historic rate, and now other jurisdictions are copying what we're doing here. Now that is the way we're going to continue to be leaders when it comes to the environment, is to continue to invest in technologies.
Thank you, RJ. And go ahead, Jessica. Oh, shoot.
You get
Must
two
have been
answers.
good.
It's your second chance. Thank you for your patience. I'm a last minute fill-in. All right, so on to the next question. Small businesses are an integral part of the Alberta economy and urban communities around the province. In what manner would you support these businesses to be successful in the future? And we will start with Mike.
Okay,
Nope.
so for
Sorry,
small
RJ.
businesses, RJ.
Sorry, guys.
Well, definitely we need to continue to support our small businesses with a low tax environment, continue to make sure that we as a government continue to do everything we can to keep inflation in check. We've seen that. We have the lowest inflation rate across Canada right now. With that as well, the number one thing I hear from businesses over and over again is also supporting them through the regulatory process, trying to clean that up. When businesses are starting the delays, permits, process, approvals, this is what's hindering a lot of business, especially when it comes to small businesses, just getting them to the point of startup where they're actually getting that first dollar put into that till. So that's what we need to continue to do is work with them, listen to them, and make sure that we're clearing the path and hurdles out of their way to let them do what they do best, which is create jobs and support their communities.
Thank you, RJ. Jessica?
Okay, fine. Small businesses are such an integral part of Highwood, and you don't have to talk to small business owners to know how hard the last couple of years have been. But I have talked to a couple over the last month, and they've told me that they are still reeling from the pandemic, and that the UCP has done not much to help them recover, rebuild, and rehire. The Alberta NDP commits to reinstating the summer temporary employment program, and that'll help grow the labor force for small businesses. To help with the bills, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to be capping utility rates, which has, as we've seen in our local community here, devastated some businesses. And we're going to scrap the small business tax altogether for the vast majority of small businesses as well, just to give them a helping hand. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mike.
So our small businesses, our independent entrepreneurs, our freelancers, these are the people who are the heart and soul of our economy, the heart and soul of our riding, our community. The problem is when people go to try and start their business, there are a bunch of hurdles, a bunch of obstacles that they have to jump over, a lot of loops that they have to jump through just to get going. We need to incentivize them. We need to give them grants to help them get started, to defeat the startup costs that they face. Anything that has to do with their marketing, their branding, that needs to be assisted so we can allow them to actually run the economy and not rely on all the big businesses. Aside from that, the small tax is a great idea for all of our independent entrepreneurs because with them, they do get taxed quite a bit as it is, and you see that the big businesses, they for some reason pay less tax even though they make more money. So at this point, our small businesses need to have all those incentives, the startup grants, the funding to get going, to be able to have a storefront,
Thank you.
and much more.
So this next question, we'll start with Jessica. This election seems to be a referendum on leadership more than it's about any other issue. What makes your leader trustworthy? What is their track record of delivering on their promises and following through on what they've said?
Inappropriate. Rachel Notley has always shown that she cares about Alberta. She has been a stable, competent leader who various people from different political stripes have commended for her leadership during a very difficult time, during the most sustained downturn since the 80s here in Alberta. We were given the reins to a ship, the ship was going in the wrong direction. The Alberta NDP was in power for 4 years out of however many years here. We dealt with those problems, and Rachel Notley was a strong, consistent force during that period of time. What we're seeing, I mean, I almost don't want to mention it because it's so obvious, but what we're seeing from the UCP is, to put it mildly, instability and chaos. We see a leader who is changing their mind constantly, says things that maybe she shouldn't say, and is factually incorrect a lot of the time. Rachel Notley is patient, she's stable, and she's a great leader.
Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
So I actually just want to give some credit and a shout out here. Our leader is actually in the building, Mr. Jeevan Mangat, and the most credit I can give him, he has so much knowledge, so much intellect, and so much historical input on the way Alberta has formed for so long. He not only knows the current issues, he's known issues that have been faced by all of you for the past 50 years, things that have been going on since the 80s. And from then until now, he's been able to study the economy. He's been able to be a part of the workforce in a steady manner and truly understands the challenges faced by everyday people as a civil engineer. He's the type of person you want to lead the province. He's not your typical career politician. He's one of you. He's one of all of us. He can listen to you. He understands the problems that you face. There's no disconnect between the government and society. He's here for you.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, RJ.
Well, when I speak about our government, I speak about us as United Conservatives. And what I will say is, you heard a statement that somebody thought or didn't believe Alberta was headed in the right direction. I always believe Alberta has been headed in the right direction. It's just the NDP that decided that it wasn't. Albertans knew they were headed in the right direction. When you want to talk about if you can trust, Rachel Notley never campaigned on a carbon tax, yet it was her Bill 1. She never carbon taxed on a punitive Bill 6 that attacked farmers, yet she put that through as well. What I can say about United Conservatives is we came with the most comprehensive platform ever, and with that we accomplished 97% before this election. We put it forward to Albertans and we follow through with our promises. That's what we've done for over the last 4 years.
Thank you, RJ. All right, so this question will start with Mike, and I'll just remind the audience, no commentary, please. So why is net zero by 2050 important, or not? And what will your party do by 2035 to ensure Alberta meets that target?
So the net zero agenda being pushed for 2030 is not currently relevant. As I mentioned before, our current temperature is not at an alarming temperature currently. It's not at an alarming level. Once it does get a little bit higher, if it does, because we're actually not seeing a constant rise, all we're trying to do at this point is combat that temperature. We're trying to help reduce emissions, not in the way that everyone else is by building electric cars that actually burn more fossil fuels, but actually installing green plots, green spaces that let off more oxygen as opposed to producing more of our carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide. When you cut down trees to make paper straws and stop using plastic, you're actually eliminating your environmental input to Alberta. You're actually creating more harm because you're not allowing that oxygen to be produced by all of our green nature. And aside from that, that net zero is a federal agenda.
Thank you, Mike. RJ, questions to you.
Well, I think when we continue to work with our energy partners around the province, net zero is something that they're working to. I think what we need to do, though, is work collaboratively with them. When governments push timelines that are unachievable, that's when you drive cost up and it ends up on your bills as consumers. We have to stop that. If we actually work collaboratively with our energy providers here, we can actually work with them. They want net zero. This is something that they've told us. They've been loud and clear about it. We're going to continue to work with them, but as a government, we have to be collaborative. Forcing this in a timeline that doesn't fit hurts every single Albertan on their utility bills and at the gas pump. That is not something that we can continue to do. It is just not sustainable.
Thank you, RJ. Go ahead, Jessica.
So net zero is very important to the environment and for our future generations, as I mentioned earlier. The Alberta NDP is looking toward net zero on the utilities by 2035 and net zero for our economy by 2050. Now, so even now that we've seen the O&G industry rebound from the downturn, all of those jobs have not returned. And it's not because oil is not at a high price, it's because these companies get more efficient. And what we need to do is turn towards other industries and make sure that people are trained and ready to look forward. So we don't want someone's position being eliminated from their current industry that they're working in and then having to go to a low income or a minimum wage job, for instance. We don't want to see communities decimated. So working towards net zero is an economic way forward. It makes sure that we're looking forward when we're keeping up with the rest of the world. And
Thank you very much, Jessica.
okay.
So this next question starts with RJ. Will you and your party commit to protecting pensions within the CPP and not forcing seniors to join an Alberta pension plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. I want to be clear. I've seen this over and over again. The decision about a CPP, we want to put forward to Albertans what it looks like on both sides of it. It will go, if Albertans choose, it'll be your decision. Once again, full stop. That is the guarantee. That is the answer. And when that is put forward, we'll present it so every Albertan can look at what it looks like on both sides, and Albertans can decide. That's our guarantee as a UCB. That is the truth.
Thank you, RJ. Jessica, the question is yours.
Again, I think we've made it pretty clear we don't want to do this. It's not a good idea. Taking funds out of the CPP, which is a large pension plan, which is stable, and letting this government manage that doesn't sound like a great idea to most people. So again, Danielle Smith has said the issues of an Alberta pension plan, that idea will be revisited after the election, and she is not campaigning on it. There is a reason for this, and there is a reason that the UCP is continuously going after this. So I believe what I read today was from Trevor Toome. He's an economist in Calgary, and he said the corporate tax hike that we're talking about, the 11%, is fine. And what's harmful would be Alberta moving to an Alberta pension plan. That would be far more detrimental to Alberta.
Thank you, Jessica. Go ahead, Mike.
So let's be clear here that with an Alberta pension plan, Albertans are not losing their CPP because they're still Canadian citizens as well. They can receive their CPP regardless of where they live. The benefit of moving to an Alberta pension plan is that we can reduce premiums and enhance the benefits. It has nothing to do with losing CPP.
Thank you very much, Mike. So for this next question, Jessica, you'll be the first candidate to speak. What is your party's stance on developing the hydrogen economy?
All right, I don't know that much about hydrogen in terms of the actual industry itself, but I know it's on our list of various energy technologies to pursue, along with wind, solar, thermal, and I believe there's some lithium as well, and certain minerals. So to be honest, I can't speak to the technicalities of hydrogen, but I will look into it. I will have to learn more.
Perfect. All right, Mike, go ahead.
I'll also admit I'm not an expert in hydrogen, but the plan here is to consult with experts not only across Alberta and across the country, but the experts who have done it right in other countries as well, and take input on how we can actually build a successful economy and use hydrogen as part of our energy sector.
Thank you, Mike. Go ahead, RJ.
Well, we definitely in Alberta over the last 4 years have seen a huge expression of interest in hydrogen through our tier plan technology innovations and emissions reduction plan. We've been able to fund a lot of technologies like I brought up before. What we're seeing is a mass interest in hydrogen, and it's because we've created that regulatory low tax environment for that investment, and we've proven as a government we're going to stand through investing in those technologies through programs like TIER. With that, there's possibilities through hydrogen that are, I don't even think all of us understand. We're talking about blends for power generation. This is a great potential possibility for Alberta moving forward when it comes to reducing emissions and providing an additional source to power our grids.
Thank you, RJ. So Mike, you will start with this question. What will you and your government do to increase funding and support for the arts?
So the arts program is definitely something we've seen growth in over the past number of years. As a matter of fact, on a daily basis, I work with someone who by trade is an artist. And in order for those people to succeed, we need to look at our budget and we need to reallocate our funding to allow them to portray their work more and more publicly around the province. We need to have shows that allow them to showcase and sell their work, allow them to make a living without needing a second job, as is the case with most Albertans these days. We should be able to live without having more than one job. But to get funding to them, unfortunately, it would mean cuts to other sectors. But with those cuts to other sectors, it has to be the ones that don't have a great impact on our economy. It's the ones that have the most minimal impact, the ones that don't play the biggest role. And unfortunately, as much as people hate cuts, it's a necessary factor if you would like to see more funding going into an arts program.
Thank you, Mike. Go ahead, RJ.
I love this question. Even before I was elected, I met John Scott, an icon in film and television. And with that, he proposed a film and tax credit that would ignite the arts and filming and television here in Alberta. And I was very happy to take that up to Edmonton and work with our partners to get that across the line. That is why we're seeing that huge interest right now, millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in investment, like films or in shows we've just seen, like Last of Us, that were filmed right here in Okotoks, and we saw our partner communities like High River and all across the Alberta get filmed in. These are great opportunities, first for showcasing how beautiful Alberta is, and as well with that, the strength it brings in those small communities, because those film productions leave a lot of money here and support a lot of our local businesses, some of which I know in small towns started their business at the start of a film and were well on to success by the time they moved on from filming. So this is incredible opportunity for Alberta.
Thank you very much, RJ. Jessica, go ahead. Go ahead, Jessica.
So I received an email yesterday from someone who is a leader in Highwood's arts community. In his words, which I'm going to steal entirely, the arts play such a vital role in our lives. It attracts talent and business investment. It supports mental health and creates community. The Alberta Foundation for the Arts is a cornerstone of Alberta's cultural sector, and their funding has been reduced by almost a third over the past 15 years. Arts funding is about quality of life for Albertans, and it is about the economy as well. The NDP will give a 50% increase in funding to the AFA, create a standalone arts capital grants program to support a range of projects, create a council to showcase and amplify Alberta talent and attract world-class performances in shows and events to Alberta.
Thank you very much, Jessica. So this next question is from the floor, and it's regarding school divisions, and we'll go to RJ first. Support staff are overlooked. They're overworked and underpaid. 65% of support staff in the Foothills Division are working 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. These people are the backbone of schools. What are you going to do for them?
Well, now, over the past 4 years, it was really important that we brought our spending in line so that we weren't looking at debt and deficits that are now costing taxpayers $3 billion a year in debt servicing costs. Now that we have an economy that is creating the sustainable income necessary, we are making those investments into our schools. Historically, we're up to $8.8 billion, which is more than ever. We've announced 106 new schools and modernizations since 2019, created a new K-12 education funding model to provide predictability, invested $85 million in targeted supports for students who require extra help with literacy and numeracy after 2 years of interrupted schooling. We've increased transportation funding by 43% in 2019, and we've actually made regulatory changes so 33,000 more students can get busing to their schools. Now, we're going to continue to focus on making sure we push as much as we can to build a strong education system.
Jessica, go ahead.
Can you repeat the question, would you mind?
Yeah, absolutely. So support staff are largely overlooked. They are overworked and underpaid. 65% of support staff in the Foothills Division are working 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. These people are the backbone of schools. What are you going to do for them?
So we're going to hire 3,000 of them, and it's imperative that we start to pay these people more because they earn a depressingly low wage at this moment. They do some of the most important work out there. So the Alberta NDP will refund the PUF, or program unit funding, which is an the early intervention program for kindergartners and ages 2 to 5 that are going to be, it has great success. It has wonderful learning outcomes, and under the UCP, they cut it from kindergartners. So these EAs are going to work in program unit funding, they're going to work in schools from K to 12, and they're going to significantly increase everyone's experience in schools. So right now we have these kids with complex needs, whether that's physical, behavioral, or learning needs, and they're not getting anywhere near the support they need in the classroom. So when we hire these EAs, when we hire this support staff, we're going to see improvement across the board.
All right, Mike, the question is yours.
I think one of the greatest implementations that would be beneficial to the school system is to introduce the interaction with other students. So every year when you see a graduating class, even coming out of grade 12, or whether it's graduating from elementary school to high school, you have your top 10% of students. Once we're graduating with averages over 90%, instead of putting that extra stress on our support staff, have those students enter a tutoring program that can also help them contribute to the credentials they need to move on to their next level of education. Allow them to help the students that are following behind them so they can bring up their grades. It also reinforces the principles and the lessons that they were taught by teaching to others. It reinforces that knowledge and having them repeat it and show other students how to replicate it and how to bring their grades up, new study methods, new ways to take tests. That will help.
Quiet from the floor, please.
That's it.
Okay, thank you, Mike. So this next question is also from the floor. There's been a lot of talk about increased funding, but there's also been talk about people struggling financially in Alberta. How do you propose to increase funding? Where is this money coming from when we're struggling to pay bills? And we will start with Jessica.
All right, so we have huge surpluses in our budget right now. And like I said during my opening, I think a lot of this has to do with reallocating money into programs that prevent higher costs down the road. And this applies to education with PUF funding and EAs, and it applies to healthcare when we're talking about primary care and investing in doctors and preventing those diseases down the road. So it's not for me so much about where is that extra funding coming from, although we are going to raise the corporate tax rate in order to stabilize our economy a little bit more. However, really, when it comes down to it, this is a kind of the theme that I see across the board, is Band-Aid solutions instead of preventative investment.
Thank you, Jessica. Go ahead, Mike.
So part of the reasons that I think we've seen over the past few years why people struggle to pay bills, a lot of people were out of work over the course of the pandemic, and that obviously with the lack of employment and people being either furloughed for even a couple of weeks or whether they were laid off for the course of 2 years. That definitely causes them to go into debt. It causes them to pull out loans that they then have to pay back, and the stress of having to stay on top of all their finances never ends. And unfortunately, that's been the case for the majority of people across this great province. To do that, what needs to happen is we need to end the welfare program overall, and instead of allowing people to go into debt, we need to use that money that's going to the welfare for the ones who are just too lazy to work and put that money for people who are able to work and give them raises when they're
Quiet
back
on the
to work
floor,
so they
please.
can actually afford to pay bills. And there's a lot in the Orange Clown Party here.
All right. Thank you, Mike. And go ahead, RJ.
Well, we need to continue to focus on what is working well. The NDP, when they were in power for 4 years, they're actually coming back with the same ideologies. Raise taxes, cap the oil sands, aggressive phase-outs that don't meet reasonable timelines, all driving business, economy, costs on the individual, and destroying our economy. What we've seen over the last 4 years is if we reduce red tape, we lower taxes, and we continue to support and work with our economy, we will be in those surpluses. We've seen the greatest diversification in the past 4 years. We've seen revenue to government increase. We lowered taxes, and revenue went up in government. The NDP raised taxes, which they're intending on doing again, and it will go down. The revenue will go down. So when it comes to funding, we need to continue a low-tax environment that creates that job environment that continues that growth that we see in our communities across Alberta, and we will have the funding once again to be able to sustainably invest.
So our next question, we will be starting with Mike. If elected, how will you support the overall growth and expansion of the Okotoks Foothills and Highwood riding in the Legislative Assembly?
So in the Highwood riding alone, I think part of our expansion needs to be the input of the people of the community. So we've just seen the amalgamation of Turner Valley and Black Diamond, which will ultimately make a growth in the economy that was struggling between the two municipalities now as one with Diamond Valley. Unfortunately, we're also seeing that Calgary's trying to expand to take over part of the Highwood riding, and we can't allow that to happen. There would be too much influence from a big city municipal government that's currently in place. We need to rely on our municipalities, our mayors here. We need to have constant conversations with the mayors of Okotoks, of Diamond Valley, of De Winton, and get their input on what is the next best way to expand and grow our economy.
Thank you, Mike. Go ahead, RJ.
Well, I think one of the things that's important is making sure that when it comes to growth, that we have the capital infrastructure in place to be able to support that growth. I think that's going to be a continued conversation and dedication to working collaboratively with our municipal partners to make sure that we're predicting and getting that infrastructure built where and when needed. Now, of course, this means that coming up with ideas like 10 or 20-year capital investment plans to look to the forward to the future so that we're making sure that we're aligning those priorities and we're getting that built with our municipalities is definitely important. These are the things that are going to continue to support that growth that we're currently seeing in our communities. And of course, as a government, we're going to commit to always funding and making sure that the municipalities get what they need, and also even take a look at how we find a more predictable way to fund our municipalities. That might mean conversations about different funding models that help them have a more predictable funding model.
And go ahead, Jessica.
Could you repeat the question one more time, please?
Yeah, absolutely. If elected, how will you support the overall growth and expansion of Okotoks, the Foothills, and the Highwood in the Legislative Assembly?
Okay, so municipalities have been chronically underfunded for a long time now, and what we're seeing is infrastructure costs are rising because we're not being able to deal with that, and we need to be helping our municipalities in the legislature get those capital projects, as you were saying. So the NDP has committed to an initiative called Hometown Alberta, which will fund community infrastructure such as arenas, community centers, cultural centers, and plazas. And this is just to take a little bit more of that capital infrastructure burden off of municipalities who are having so much trouble with that right now. We would restore ticket revenue that was removed by the RCMP to municipalities. We would actively build schools so the municipalities don't have to lobby government. And we would fund affordable housing, which is actually under the provincial jurisdiction. We need to work collaboratively with groups from all communities and bridge those connections where we can to make progress. And as an MLA, it's your job to do so.
Thank you very much, Jessica. So at this time, we're going to take a quick 10-minute break and reconvene at 8:22. All right, so I'm going to get started while everybody does take their seats, just so that we can get through as many questions as possible in this next 23 minutes. So this first question is going to go to RJ. Dependency on natural resource revenues to balance our budget has caused significant issues we are all familiar with. How does your party propose to improve the predictability and stability of provincial finances?
Well, the key to that is to continue to grow our economy and diversify. And actually right now, I think that's one of the most exciting parts of what we're seeing is that reigniting of Alberta's economy over the last 4 years by reducing taxes, regulatory burden. We're seeing historic investment. We're breaking records in venture capital investment year over year. We're seeing broad diversification in film and tax, agri-food, hydrogen, geothermal. These are the things that are going to be able to continue to grow both how much revenue the government has, but also stabilize the ebbs and flows of oil and gas. So I think the path that we're on, we're seeing the impacts already. And as long as we continue to create that low tax environment and not continue to raise taxes, that is not going to continue to sustain this environment that we have right now. We need to stay the course. We're seeing the positive impacts. It's building revenue.
Perfect.
It's
Thank
working.
you, RJ. Go ahead, Jessica.
Sure. So with sure. We need to make a better balance in our revenue streams. So that means getting the right taxes. That means in a balanced way, in a responsible way. That means fostering businesses with grants and encouraging businesses with incentives and diversifying, as we've been talking about all night, because I have 60 seconds, so I'm going to be quick about it. But part of this as well is always attracting investment and attracting people to Alberta. So we are constantly in competition with the rest of the world and the rest of the provinces. And part of doing this means presenting ourselves as a stable place to invest and a good place to live, because businesses without people are not businesses. So if we support our way of life here, our quality of life with healthcare and schools, people are going to want to live here, and our economy will grow, our revenue base will widen, and we'll be more resilient.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Mike.
So what has been the focal point and the most stable part of Alberta's economy before the collapse of everything in the last 3 years? Alberta's biggest sector is oil and gas. And if we could produce our own oil, use our own oil, and get a pipeline flowing through the province, that would create a major boost to our economy. It would stabilize our economy, and it would allow everyone to have more affordable bills. You could fill up your vehicle with gas or with diesel even much more affordably, like we were able to do at the beginning of 2020 when gas prices were at a record low. And you can heat your home much better. It would create a very attractive environment to people from all across the country. I know myself, I moved here 3 years ago because Alberta was the best and most prosperous place to live. There was no opportunity anywhere in the country because no one was relying on your local resources, your natural resources that you have to offer. Alberta had done that. And even now, in the 3 years I've been here, I've grown as a person, as a professional, more than I can say I ever did in 25 years on out east.
Thank you, Mike. All right, Jessica, you'll be the first to take this question. It has become obvious since the pandemic that mental health is a huge issue. What will your party do to address this issue and enable not just youth and children to have free access to mental health professionals?
So this is the largest issue that comes up when I'm talking to people. It surprised me actually because it's just a problem in the sense that it's an undercurrent that touches all other sectors. So if we're talking about healthcare, it's a big deal. If we're talking about affordable housing, on and on, every sector is touched by the lacking mental health that we have in this province. So COVID just made it worse. These problems skyrocketed, and people need help more than ever right now. Mental health care is health care, and we need to fund it. The NDP's plan for the family health teams includes mental health professionals at all of these public clinics. So we also are supporting a commitment to ensure that 5 sessions for every Albertan for mental health therapy is under the provincial insurance plan. And this will have a wide-ranging, broad benefits across every sector, as I mentioned previously.
Thank you, Jessica. Go ahead, Mike.
Mental health is such a big part of our society. We see a lot of people that deal with different mental health issues, and it honestly needs to be added to our healthcare system and be part of our publicly funded healthcare. It's not something that can be dismissed. It can't be something that people have to pay out of pocket for. That's something that needs to be available to anyone who needs it. I know a lot of people who deal with depression, they deal with anxiety, they deal with PTSD, if they're veterans or if they've been through anything traumatic. Those services are not affordable enough for them to have it readily available, because anytime you have to go to a therapist, you're spending hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars for treatment over the course of a year, when you shouldn't have to pay out of pocket for that. That treatment should be available.
Thank you, Mike. Go ahead, RJ.
So when it comes to the mental health support for the youth, our government really took a look at this, actually analyzed what has happened over the last couple of years and came up with some strategies now, one of which would be our promise to put $126 million into supporting diverse classrooms. This is going to help hire and train more support staff, including specialists like counselors, psychologists, and interpreters. And on a similar note, we understand that there's additional impacts on mental health. So we have come with $110 million over the next 3 years to address these issues. The government's funding for this support through the local authorities and our school divisions will help provide a collaborative way to develop student support and additional student mental health support within their schools.
Thank you, RJ. This next question will start with Mike. How do you plan to further support university students, for example, tuition, housing, and food?
Well, one thing that we need to do in our post-secondary institution, especially the ones that do receive taxpayer funding, we need to protect freedom of speech, association, peaceful assembly. We can't have censorship of ideas. We need to allow everybody that goes to school to be able to have their voice heard and not have people attack them for having a different viewpoint. Teach all sides of history, teach all different theories, and not just teach one side.
Thank you. Go ahead, RJ.
I know this is probably a little bit outside of the question, but I know when my kid graduated out of state, the biggest concern for me after he'd spent money being there was actually a job for him when he got out. And that's supporting the economy and making sure that there's high-paying jobs for students when they graduate is a big part of this equation too. And of course, we're going to work with our post-secondary institutions to provide ways to make sure that we have the most affordable tuition fees and cost for education within the province. Now that we have that booming economy, surpluses and more dollars that are being generated in revenue, we're going to continue to work with our post-secondaries and target areas of high need, including healthcare professionals and skills and trades, in which we've been dedicated and focused to for the last 4 years, not just addressing more supports and more class space for training, but also the parity of esteem that I think all skills trades workers deserve.
Thank you, RJ. Go ahead, Jessica.
So if you talk to any student in post-secondary right now, you know that tuition has skyrocketed over the past several years. It's a huge part of the affordability crisis. It's just compounding the issue here in Alberta. The UCP cut almost $1 billion from operating budgets in Alberta's universities, colleges, and technical institutions. The Alberta NDP will freeze tuition at 2022-23 levels, canceling the latest round of hikes. We will fund post-secondary institutions in a stable and predictable way. We need people to go to school here. I hate the idea of someone bypassing school or leaving Alberta to go to a school because that's where they can afford to go. It's so important to innovation and the economy here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. So this next question will start with RJ. Newcomers and many Albertans face barriers to fully participate in our economy and pursue opportunity in this province. How will you and your party remove those barriers?
Well, we started 4 years ago with the Fairness for Newcomers, which was very, very important to be able to make sure that individuals that were coming here with the promise of prosperity in Canada were getting fairly accredited for their training wherever they came from. We've actually achieved a lot over the last 4 years to be able to bring that more aligned and make sure that they're getting that appropriate accreditation. And even a testament to that was just last month, 1,400 healthcare professionals that have been accredited, internationally trained and accredited here because of that work we're doing on Fairness for Newcomers. This is important. People come here, they should be able to work in the profession that they're adequately trained for. Our government has committed to that, and we've committed to it directly through that accreditation process, and we will continue to ensure that there is fairness for newcomers here in Alberta.
Thank you, RJ. Jessica, the question's yours.
Well, this is a huge question to answer in 60 seconds, but we're talking about barriers for newcomers, and there are many. So when people come here, it depends on their circumstance. Some may need affordable housing, and the NDP is committed to growing our affordable housing for 40,000 people in Alberta. It's about improving inclusivity and offerings in our schools, and we're looking at offering a curriculum, not the curriculum, in various languages. And everything plays into this. So making post-secondary more affordable, supporting small business, cutting their taxes, helping people establish those businesses in our community. So like I said, there are many ways to support newcomers to Alberta and to be welcoming to them, and the Alberta NDP has multiple plans to do so.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Mike.
So the barriers for people coming to Alberta, I don't know what barriers you're actually talking about, because as I see it, the federal government has left our border wide open and given people money just to move to Canada to increase diversity when some people come here without merits or skills to actually put to work. We have more issues allowing people who graduated from our schools, who came up through our school system to actually get jobs. We're allowing everyone else to take the jobs when people here need work. We have an unemployment rate that is dangerous, and it needs to be focused back on born and raised Albertans and Canadians.
Thank you very much, Mike. I will again ask that the audience remains respectful to all candidates. Jessica, this next question will start with you. What is your party's plan to improve EMS wait times?
Yeah, this has to do with primary care once again, so surprise everyone. So what we're seeing with EMS wait times, they have improved recently. However, I would say that they have probably led to issues down the road. So if you cap the amount of time that EMS can spend in hallways, that is one thing, and they can get back on the road well, that is great. The problem is we have a nursing shortage at the other side of that hallway. So I'm gonna go back to primary care for a second. By increasing primary care, by giving people access to family doctors, with our family health teams and hooking up 1 million Albertans with GPs over the next 4 years, you're reducing that strain on EMS. There's fewer people to have to call the hospital because you're preventing some of those illnesses from getting that bad because people are able to see their family doctors. I have been in the position of throwing my toddler who's having a medical emergency in my car because I wasn't sure if EMS was going to come on time because of the wait times that we were seeing a little while ago. And no one should have to do that in Alberta. We deserve better.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Mike, the floor is yours.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, absolutely. What is your party's plan to improve EMS wait times?
So part of this comes from the fact that we don't have enough paramedics, we don't have enough EMS staff, and each of our hospitals, as we've seen, are suffering from high wait times. What we really need to be doing is allowing some private corporations to give some funding to our hospitals and to our EMS. We need to allow more hiring and growth in the emergency medical services and in healthcare overall. And with that extra funding, it allows for people to have more access to doctors. It alleviates some of that wait time by providing the extra doctors, providing the extra technology, and allowing people to have a decision on which hospitals to go to if EMS doesn't show. And if they do show, they should be taking them to the hospital with the lowest wait time as opposed to the one that's closest to them. Because if you have a hospital that's maybe 10 minutes from your house, but there's 8 hours to see a doctor, that's not okay. If there's one that might be a little bit further away, but you can see a doctor in an hour, which one are you going to choose?
Thank you very much. Go ahead, RJ.
I'm going to do exactly what I've been doing, continue to listen to frontline workers and do exactly what they're asking for. 1,400 frontline workers we engaged with starting 16 months ago. 53 recommendations as a result. These are recommendations coming directly from frontline workers, and I choose to stand behind them. And we've implemented those, and with it, we're seeing some of the greatest improvements in EMS delivery times, almost eliminating red alerts in Calgary. We now have our ambulance over 90% of the time here in our own community, up from 50% when the NDP was empowered. And let's be clear, paramedics were asking for this in 2015, and they were ignored for 4 years. They were left to stand in hallways, they were left stressed out, and they weren't listened to. I will continue, and I promise, as a son of a paramedic, that I will listen to our paramedics, that I will actually hear them. And I will make sure that this government moves forward with the recommendations that will build a better workplace environment, deal with the culture there, and improve service.
Thank you very much, RJ. All right, so for this next question, we'll start with you, Mike. Does your party support the development and furthering of Canadian oil and LNG? If so, how do you plan to press the federal government to this end?
Of course, we support the development of Canadian energy. We're in favor of getting our pipelines back up and running and creating a partnership that goes not only across Canada, but the energy corridor that we would love to create with partnering states that are between Alberta and Texas, where they have another connection to oil down there. And if you create a pipeline that goes all the way through, you're not only creating jobs, but you're lowering fuel prices for everyone in Alberta, across the country, and in the US. That's a negotiation and a trade term that even the President of the United States, I think, needs to listen to.
Thank you, Mike. Go ahead, RJ.
I just missed the first part of the question. Do you mind repeating?
Yeah, no worries. Does your party support the development and furthering of Canadian oil and LNG? If so, how do you plan to press the government, the federal government, to this end?
What?
To Canadian oil?
Canadian oil and LNG, to
Yeah.
be clear? Well, definitely. I mean, oil and gas, and definitely when we talk about LNG, this is something that the world is looking for. When you even look at the Ukrainian conflict, what's happening right now, people are still forced to buy Russian LNG at a terrible time. And with that, we have the ability to provide the most, what I would consider reasonable replacement for coal when it comes to generation and electricity. We're bound, though, in the fact that C-69 continues to prevent us from being able to transport that in the safest way possible, through pipelines. That's the reality, is pipelines are the safest way. So we need to continue to put pressure onto the federal government to reconsider and come up with a reasonable solution that allows Alberta to be the solution for global, when you talk about carbon emissions, to be able to provide alternates to coal and other generation products across the world. That's going to build a better environment, not just for Canada, but the entire globe.
Thank you, RJ. Go ahead, Jessica.
Sorry, the last part of the question was what I missed. To get the federal government to listen, is that the last word?
Yeah.
Okay.
To press the
thanks.
federal government to send.
So I think we all know how this is done because Rachel Notley was successful getting the first pipeline to Tidewater in a generation during, so listen, this is how you do it. You don't whine and complain and blame other people. You work with the government, you collaborate with them. Albertans want, these are the wise words of Janet Brown, Albertans want a better deal. They don't want a bigger fight. Blaming people and launching culture wars are not the way to get your energy to Tidewater. And the other way of doing it is by enhancing our product here in Alberta. So it doesn't have to be a refinery. It can be new ways of using bitumen. We have incredible technologies that look at spinning bitumen into really strong, similar to carbon fiber materials, and having the value add that way. This, combined with our other energy sectors, will make Alberta a powerhouse.
Thank you, Jessica. So this will be our final question before we go to closing statements from each of the candidates. So we'll start with RJ on this one. How will you support young agriculture producers like cow-calf producers and grow their businesses?
Well, what we see right now is Alberta is, combined with Saskatchewan, the breadbasket for the globe, and through our agri-food tax credit, our low tax environment, suspending the fuel tax to be able to lower the cost of farming and farming productions, and as well providing additional supports for those startup companies through, looking at, sorry, and I apologize. Get a little passionate. Coming from a farm, I guess this is a little too personal to try to fit in 60 seconds. Listen, we need to continue to find ways to be able to support our agri-food production and continue to make sure that we have appropriate farm insurance in place for those farmers, and that is surety that they have a future and they're backed by the government of Alberta, supported by the government of Alberta. And I think what we're seeing is a commitment from this United Conservative government that we will continue to do so in the future,
Thank
like
you very
not
much,
bringing
RJ.
back Bill 6.
All right. Thank you, RJ. Jessica, the floor is yours.
So as I mentioned, our agriculture in Alberta is more important than ever, and the products that we produce are important to the world entirely. So when we talk about the next generation of farmers and ranchers taking over, what we need to do is make education affordable for them, and that means funding post-secondary institutions. That means supporting agriculture programs in these institutions as well, and so we can just keep that knowledge going. We can incentivize small-scale rural startups, and this can give people who are starting in the industry that chance that they can take on a little bit easier than starting with a large-scale operation, and providing capital and upgrading grants as well. So I do think that this is an extremely important venture for the Alberta government and something that we need to address right now, because it is incredibly important that we see this industry continue and be sustained.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mike.
So I believe the support for our agriculture sector is going to start in our schools, because we need to reposition the education system so students have exposure to skills that include farming, fishing, and anything outdoors. So when they get out of high school, if say they don't want to go to university, say it's not an option that they see fit for them, we can go to our farmers and say, guess what? We've got ranch hands, trained ranch hands available to you to start apprenticeships, We have people that can assist you on your farm to help you grow and sustain your land, to sustain all of your livestock. We have people who now understand that. They've been in school, they've worked with their hands, they're able to come right out of school, transition into the workforce, transition onto the farms, and be productive right away and be a valuable asset to all of our ranchers.
Thank you very much, Mike. So that concludes the question period for the candidates. Thank you to everybody who did write down questions. We did get quite a bit of them, so I appreciate that. And with that, we will be getting into the 90 seconds for closing from each candidate, and we will start with Mike.
Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and I want to remind everyone that when you go to the polls on May 29th, or if you go to the advanced polls the week before, you have an honest choice to make, as this election means more to Alberta than we've ever realized before, because this also looks at what the future of Canada looks like. You vote with logic, you vote with intelligence when you go to the polls, and you vote for what you truly want to see in Alberta. We're all Albertans at heart. We with the Wild Rose Party are here to listen to you, and we are not about government agendas. We are about Albertan possibilities and prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Go ahead, RJ.
This election is really going to come down to looking at the track records of two parties. You can vote for an NDP government that drove countless billions of dollars in investment out of the province, incited consecutive credit downgrades, hiked fees and taxes 97 times, resulting in record insolvencies, bankruptcies, 183,000 lost jobs, forced families to move out of Alberta for an unprecedented 13 quarters. An NDP party that is now committed to a 38% tax hike on Alberta businesses and job creators, committed to a net zero electricity grid that will cost Albertans billions of dollars in driving up your electricity bills 40% overnight, and businesses as well. They're talking about capping our oil sands, which we need to fund our schools and healthcare right now. They want to bring back Bill 6, a bill that will hurt our farming families. Or you can vote for a government that has fulfilled 90% of its campaign promises, has seen massive growth in our economy due to a business-friendly environment with low corporate taxes, creating 250,000 jobs, reducing 33% of red tape, having the lowest rate of inflation in Canada, and is seeing historical diversification in technology, film and television, hydrogen, geothermal, agri-food processing. I would hope when you look at your children's future, that you know where the jobs are and what they need to be successful, that we provide them that unlimited prosperity that we have engaged and had as a part of our lives. On May 29th, I hope you vote for me and the United Conservative Party.
Thank you, RJ. All right, Jessica, the floor is yours.
Thanks to all of you for coming here tonight, and thank you for watching the forum online if you're tuning in. Being politically informed is so important right now. I'm going to be honest with you, one of the hardest things about being the underdog in this election is that I cannot technically earn your vote. The vote that you're going to cast is going to be earned by your MLA over the next 4 years. So if you ask yourself, over the last 4 years, did my MLA earn my vote? Did he get back to you? Did he advocate for Highwood and do his best? Did his leader, Danielle Smith, is she taking Alberta in the direction you want to see it go? I ask you to...
Quiet, please.
I ask you to consider this. When I thought about the many reasons not to run in this election, and there are many when you're a mother of 2 little kids with a full-time job, and it's scary too, and think about, being able to answer super technical questions in a forum. It's all very intimidating. And then I weighed all of those excuses, I'll say, against the importance of this moment and what this means to the future of this province. Well, I'm here, even with the cards firmly stacked against me, because I care deeply about Highwood and the people in it, and we deserve better. I'm proud to stand with Rachel Notley and the Alberta NDP, and standing with me are dozens of volunteers from across Highwood and across the political spectrum who have proven we can work together. I got stopped midway through.
Stop. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Counting as you go, yeah.
I'm proud to stand with this party, and standing with me are dozens of volunteers across Highwood and across the political spectrum who have proven we can work together. We welcome your support regardless of who you voted for in the past. And we don't have to agree on everything. As long as we agree public health care, future generations,
Thank you, Jessica.
our natural environment, and this province are worth fighting for. Thank you.
All right, so that concludes the formalities for the evening. I would like to thank everybody for attending tonight, whether it be online or with us here in person and submitting your questions. Special thanks to our candidates for coming tonight and providing us all the information and answering all the questions. And thank you to Dawn especially for organizing the event, and the Diamond Valley District and the Okotoks District Chamber of Commerce for putting this on, as well as the Evangelical Free Church for hosting us tonight. So don't forget, get out May 29th to vote, and I believe the candidates will be around a little bit longer if there are any questions. So have a great evening. Get home safe.